Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of the Blue Oval Podcast. I am Ben Weissman. Joining me, as always, Garrett Zatlin. How's it going, man?
Ben, what was scarier? All the Halloween activities that are about to come up, or me having to write three different conference articles this weekend? So I think it's the
Neither
last.
are scary. I enjoy all of them. Actually, it's so funny. My son, this is like his first Halloween where he's actually like noticing things, and
Right.
he's just like we go around and we're just driving around, and he'll see lights, and then he'll do like the sign for more, and he just keeps wanting us to go see more and more lights. Like he is just all in. Christmas is going to be great for him. He's going to be like
Yeah.
so excited to see all the lights.
Yeah. The gas bill is going to be really high, but other than that,
We're just going to be going around all night when he gets upset. Yeah.
Speaking of which, things that are scary. Apple ratings, we have 0 on there. That's very scary. So no new ones. We're now at 78, still at 78. But Spotify, we love that. +3, up to 131. Thank you. Keep doing that. We're also on YouTube. Keep checking that out. We're slowly growing on that end. And yeah, that's all I really have on that end. But Ben, we have a lot to talk about.
We do.
We're going to try to talk about a bunch of different conferences. We'll talk about the major conferences that have the most major headlines. If we don't touch on your conference, sorry. There's 30 plus of them. We can't possibly touch on all of them. So we're going to work our way through. We're going to try to talk about as much as we can and just pull some insights. And we'll riff. Sound good?
Sounds good. And let's get it started with the ACC Championships. And we can start with the men's side where we saw North Carolina take home the upset win over Syracuse. Parker Wolf getting the individual win with no Rocky Hansen this weekend due to a small injury. It was no surprise to see Wolf take home the title, but it was a surprise to see North Carolina come up and beat Syracuse after really losing to them significantly at Nuttycombe. We knew that this North Carolina team had the talent if they could put it together, and they finally did this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it really just depended on Jake Gebhardt, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the big X factor. That's who I said in the preview. So you have Parker Wolf going first. You have Alex Phillip fourth. What an amazing pickup he's been, by the way. You get then Ethan Strand in sixth. And then Jake Gebhardt finishing ninth is maybe the best race of his career. That's such a monumental race. Now, granted, he could have finished 15th and then they would have been fine, right? So for him to step up like he did, it's just no way Syracuse could match through four. And then with Colton Sands coming through to finish 29th, yeah, it's not the greatest, fifth scorer ever, but it's better than whatever Syracuse had, or just as good, I should say. And that was ultimately what allowed UNC to kind of come through there. So I think Gebhardt's like the real hero here.
Yep.
But what a race.
Yeah, I mean, Wolf, Phillip, and Strand have been great all year. I think this was a nice step in the right direction for Strand as well. But I mean, we really expected these three to be the ones that were going to be leading this team. Like you said, they just needed to get something a little bit more out of that four spot, and that was Gebhardt. For Syracuse, not a bad race by any means.
No.
They just didn't have the back end quite as far up as they have had in weeks previous. I mean, Paul O'Donnell second, Perry McKinnon fifth, Sam Lawler 10th, like all very strong results. And those guys in the back weren't that far back. They just were just one or two spots further back than maybe we expected them to be coming into this weekend.
Well, I think really the key guys, are Matthew Scrape, Alex Comerford. Like those two guys have been, really solid back end names for them at, Virginia Invite or Nutty
Mm-hmm.
Comes more specifically. And they both had really bad off days. I think they were just well further back. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe one might have been a DNF. But yeah, I think, the packs have been pretty tight, so far this year, especially with the Virginia Invitational is a good example. And, Nathan Lawler is clearly not at 100%.
Yeah.
He's clearly had some kind of setback. And so him at 22nd's not bad, but like, Sam Lawler at 10th's good, but then they needed two other guys hovering around 15th place, give or take, a point or two to kind of make up this 16-point gap
Yeah.
that UNC put up there. So yeah, it's tricky because you can't say that like any of their scores ran poorly given how they,
Right.
Lawler could be better, but they just weren't as tight as they should have been at the same
Yeah.
time. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's been their big like strength this year is they have these like strong packs of like 2 or 3 and then another 2 or 3, and like there isn't these huge scoring gaps, and in these smaller fields at conference championships you really need to be tight as well, and that's just not what they had. If you look further down the team scoring, Virginia very solid third place finish. Notre Dame not just we they just left us a little cold this year.
Yep.
They have the guys, but I mean, you look at where they finished 11, 15, 19, 20, 21. Like these are guys that you would not expect to, or it wouldn't be shocking to see them all at least 5 spots higher. They're just a little bit away from really being able to be a little bit more into the national picture. You feel like, as it is, they're just a very solid, I think, middle tier team at this point.
This year's Notre Dame team is last year's Michigan women's team.
Yes, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're
like no, just they haven't had their best race yet. They haven't had their best race yet, and then we're gonna get to nationals. They're gonna place 15th, and it'll be like, no, they just haven't had their best race yet. It's like, no, Garrett, the season's over. It's like, oh. So, and they're like a talented team. Like you look on paper, like Tyler Burke, Ethan Coleman, CJ Singleton, Josh Methner, Carter Solomon, Jake Renfrey. Like I'm going down
Vincent Murray.
Vincent Murray, like all these guys, and it does hurt them a lot that Carter Solomon's just not at top form this year for whatever reason. Methner's good, but he's kind of up and down. And, when Berg is, your top scorer of the ACC Championships, and he's been kind of up and down, it's like, wow, what should we even expect from this team? And the problem is, like, they're not running poorly either. That's the most frustrating part.
Yeah, it's just like lukewarm. It's just like, and that's, and for a team that we thought very realistically could be a top 10 team this year at NCAAs, it's just frustrating because you see that they're not that far away, but they really haven't gotten all that close to that yet.
No. All right, so Florida State, real quick, want to quickly touch on them. Florida State, 117. It's basically, if they don't have everyone clicking, this is kind of what you're going to expect. I thought Wake Forest in 6th place, though, was pretty solid without Rocky Hansen. You throw him in there, this is a pretty good lineup. And, like, I don't know how – I didn't even do that.
They could finish 4th, right? I mean –
close. Yeah, they'd be close. If he was 1st or 2nd, sure. They'd be close.
Yeah, because, I mean, their 5th score was 49th. So, yeah, I mean, that's
it would have been close.
40-point gap.
Placements, you push up all the Notre Dame scores 5 points. So,
right.
Although you would have to push up all the Wake Forest guys 4 points in total. But, like, you see what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So that's all I got on the men's race, though.
It would be close. Yeah. I think if Hansen can make it, and it doesn't sound like he's going to be back for regionals, so it's going to be tough for them to make it to nationals without him, I think. Although they should have a good amount of Colas points as long as they run moderately well at Southeast Regional. They're going to be a very solid team at full strength at nationals if they're there.
Yeah, I mean, like this was the race where everyone who we said needed to run well on the same day, they did. It's just super unlucky that they didn't have Rocky Hansen, the one guy who's been running consistently well all season. Although Joseph O'Brien has as well. So that's it.
Let's go to the women's side. We saw NC State take home a dominant win. There was no close second place finish like last year. Very convincing victory. Caitlin Toohey, another convincing win as well. Amina Matug, though, finishing 2nd. A huge performance there, beating Kelsey Camille for that runner-up spot. This is like, you can look at this NC State result in so many different ways.
Yeah.
You can look at it through the glass half full or the glass half empty. Which way did you see it after this weekend?
To me, I'm looking at this as mostly glass half full, I think. Or at least, like, it's still getting poured to half full, if that makes any sense. Like, Toohey's still great. Camille's still great. Amaris Tanisima is a DNF in the final, 1K, I think, which is upsetting. Yep. But I think what you had mentioned is that John Galt at Let's Run had basically reported that she had a calf cramp in the final portion of that race. And if that's the case, then you would assume that she's probably good to come back and maybe be an effective scorer in the future. Not only that, Leah Stevens continues to be great. Sam Bush, 11th place is a really encouraging performance. Is she going to be the top 20 finisher at the national meet this year? Maybe not. But if she is 36, is that reasonable? By the time she rounds into form another 2 or 3 weeks, I don't think that's unrealistic after her
Yeah,
place finish.
no, not at all. And I think it's just the ball is rolling forward for her. And for Tanisima, I think she was like 15th or 16th at 5K. So even like it's still not at her top level, but for someone who hasn't raced for this long and you're in spikes, you're pushing it so hard, it's not super shocking to see a cramp. That's not necessarily indicative of an injury or fitness. It's just you haven't been running full out like this for a long time. And so if she can manage that over the next few weeks, I don't think we'll see her at regionals would be my guess. I think they'll probably want to rest her. I don't think she's like a top 10 name like we envisioned, but she could still very well be an All-American, I think, when it's all said and done at nationals if she remains healthy over these next few weeks.
Yeah. Now, granted, like the idea of her remaining in our top 50 is a challenge because at this point
Yeah,
you can't. You just
I
can't. But
agree.
I agree with you on that end. Grace Hartman didn't have her best day in 19th place, but like if this team's going to be that dominant over a good Notre Dame team, um, with her being 19th, I think that's pretty impressive. And shout out to Gianna Corzo, by the way, who's been quietly really solid for this
Yeah.
team. And I don't know if she's going to get the credit that she deserves, but so far she's been great, very underrated. I don't know if she's going to emerge as a scorer on the national stage, but I just thought she deserves some kudos.
Absolutely. In second place was Notre Dame, just beating out Virginia by 2 points for that second place finish. There just wasn't a lot of oomph to this Notre Dame lineup. And I mean, you had Markovic in fourth, Sienna Chisholm, solid race in 13th. Would have expected her to be a little bit further inside that top 10, though. And then you just Shizlicki was solid at 16th. And then they had a nice group from 23 to 25. They just didn't have that firepower that we kind of expected them to have coming into this race. And luckily, they did just enough to hold off a Virginia team that just had a very similar structure, honestly, when you look at it. They had fifth, 10th, and then 20th, and then a few other women right
The fifth, 10th,
behind.
15th.
Yeah, so sorry, yeah, 5th, 10th, 15th, and 20th. A very solid run for all those women. I think you have to be really happy with what you're seeing from Virginia right now.
I, the Notre Dame women, they ran fine, but I think everyone except Markovic had like 5 extra points in them.
Yeah, agreed.
And I think that's how I look at this. It's like, fine, you could probably do better. You could maybe argue Aaron Strzelecki, sorry if I'm butchering that, if she, maybe that was probably roughly on par, but everyone
Sure.
else, I was like, just a little bit more would have been nice. I think for Virginia, the big hero here is Caroline Tim. Like Marco Appleton ran well. Jenny Schilling
Mhm.
continues to be this amazing breakout name. Um, and what was it? Anna Workman, solid in 20th. I think she could have been a little bit better. But Caroline Tim comes in from Kennesaw State and previously before that Princeton, and she comes in with a huge 15th place finish. She was the fourth scorer on this team previously, and there was a gap in prior races. So for her to step up, completely erase that gap in one race, I think
Mhm.
this kind of shows you how good Virginia can be when they address those gaps.
Absolutely. Behind Virginia was in fourth place Syracuse and fifth North Carolina. Just North Carolina women are a lot like Michigan women from last year, I think, as well, where it's just they have all the talent in the world. It just hasn't come together for them this year.
But I don't even think they've been running well. Period. Like there hasn't even
No.
been like a like oh well you can salvage this. Like at this point, it's just a tough day. Like, and I don't like to be critical, but it's just not their best day. I have to believe that multiple women had setbacks in whatever
Sure.
capacity. Don't even not going to speculate as to what, but that's just I don't know how all of these women just basically took a step backwards. Fatima Alanis has been the lone bright spot on the team, but it's just been so surprising. I don't think I've really ever seen too many instances of a team where I was like, hey, I think they could legitimately be on the podium to I'm not sure if they're going to make the national meet.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And a lot of the women that we expect to are actually running. They're just like you said, something we have no idea. It just seems like something must have happened for them to have all fallen as far as they have from previous years. Anything on Syracuse? I mean, Savannah O'Rourke does what she always does. Very solid ninth place finish. Not a whole lot else, I don't think, to say.
No, Benite Baines wasn't even a scorer, but she's usually a scorer for this team. So I thought you could have maybe cut down a few more points if you're Syracuse, but good race. It wasn't going to matter if they cut down 60 points, right? They were still not going to beat Virginia. I think this is kind of about right. And the scores kind of reflect kind of our feelings about them. They're a fringe top 25 team. They're probably not there yet. And we'll see.
Let's go to the Big Ten championships on the men's side. Wisconsin, dominant victory going 1, 2, 4, 5, and 7. Finally have a full lineup here, or mostly full lineup, and everybody looks great. Again, the Big Ten not as strong as in years past. Michigan finishing second, Michigan State third, but still just everything I think you could have asked for in a Wisconsin performance this weekend.
6 guys top 10, 19 points. Adam Spencer's the scorer that I said he would be, and he
Yeah.
got fifth. Evan Bishop, great race from him. I've always been like a fan of him. I was like, he's gonna be really good, and so only a junior. I think he's like starting to like round into form. And Bob Liking wins his third straight Big Ten title, and he could win his
Crazy.
fourth one next year. But he'll have to face Oregon and Washington in order to do it.
It'll be the Big Ten championship going to be a lot more interesting
Yeah.
over the next few years. That's for sure. And yeah, I think Adam Spencer is one of those X factors for Wisconsin's ceiling. Like if he can run like this and be clearly he has the talent running 331 in the 1500 this past summer. If he can put it together at nationals, I mean, he really could be an All-American. And if that's the case, this is a team that really should take hold of that fourth podium spot.
I think at this point, yeah, because who is it right now? We'd say it's BYU. I'm sorry, we'd say
Yeah,
it's Northern Arizona, Oklahoma State. I
BYU.
guess we would say BYU at this point.
Yeah,
And then is the fourth spot. Syracuse takes that L. UNC. I think
yeah.
we still have questions about the consistency there. The fifth spot as well. I guess it's Wisconsin.
They're really it's almost by default, and that's a harsh thing to say for a team that just smoked the competition at Big Tens. But there really hasn't been any other team that has looked capable of having the same ceiling that this Wisconsin team does.
I think you could maybe argue Arkansas.
Yeah,
You could maybe argue California Baptist, but I think that you're right. The safer pick is Wisconsin.
sure. Absolutely. Any other, I mean, Michigan, I think this is about right. Tom Brady third, Owen McKenzie eighth. Very like they beat Michigan State pretty convincingly for the second spot. Not a whole lot here, I think, for the rest of these teams.
No, but I will say this: like if Nick Foster had run well and let's say placed fifth, like
Sure.
then they finish with 50 points, and it's not quite as a crushing loss
It's a
there. I mean, it's
30-point blowout rather than a
yeah, it's still
40-point blowout.
so. But no, I mean good races. Like Andrew Nolan, Michigan State 6th, Owen McKenzie of Michigan 8th, Jack Roberts of Illinois 9th. Good races, but nothing crazy.
Sure. Let's go to the women's side. Addie Angle takes home the title again this year over Leanne Willemsey. Willem?
Sure.
Yeah. This is not the podcast
Willemsey.
for
Let's go
pronunciations.
Willemsey, sure.
Michigan State takes home the title convincingly over Wisconsin in second and Michigan in third. Not a whole lot happened that we didn't really expect to happen. That's, I think, the most that we can say about this race.
Addie Angle looks good. Michigan State looks great. Leanne Willemsey was probably the biggest surprise of this race in second place, but she's still been good. Like I don't think it's like a total shock. It's like, okay, well, if Osika wasn't going to get second, then it was going to be like Willemsey or Veen or Windmuller or Santos.
Yeah.
It's going to be one of those groups. So Yeah, I don't have anything. Don't really have anything to offer there.
Yeah, Ohio State continues to kind of struggle. Andrea Kuhn did run, but was 61st. Yeah, just not happening for them this year, unfortunately. But like we said, Angle continues to look very very good. Do we want to move to the Big 12?
Let's do it.
All right, let's go there. And on the men's side, we saw Oklahoma State take down BYU, BYU's first year in the Big 12, but it was the Cowboys who convincingly took home this title, going 1, 2, 5, 8, and 9. Brian Massou taking home the individual win over teammate Alex Mayer. I mean, this was about as good, I think, as we maybe not quite as good as we could have expected for best case scenario for Oklahoma State, but it was pretty darn close. So it looks like a true like at top 10, top 15 guy at the very worst. You have Masaudi and Mayer looking good. You do worry a little bit about that back end in terms of what like Will Muirhead or Jonas Price or Dennis Kipnetigetich are going to do at the national meet. But that top three looks as good as anybody in the country right now.
I'm not gonna lie. I don't know if I'm as maybe excited as everyone else. Um, this race told me that they can still win the national title, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if I would say I still feel like NAU's my personal favorite. Because,
Absolutely.
like the way I look at it, I go, okay, Dennis Kipnetigetich, however you say it, he was 14th,
Mm-hmm.
and this is a guy who, like we're saying, is a top 20 name in the country
Sure.
beforehand. And it's like, well, he wasn't even a score for Oklahoma State, and then Victor Shisama is all the way back in 45th place. It's like, wait, what? And listen, I Will Muirhead, 8th, Jonas Price, 9th, was awesome. But they have not yet shown or proven that they can be All American talents. Maybe they will be, right? Who
Mm-hmm.
knows? But I'm not convinced that
But
after
they
those
need them to
performances,
be.
and
That's
that's a
that's
thing. And I don't like if I'm betting, like if we had sports books here and I'd be betting money, I'd be a little scared because these guys
yeah.
are unproven yet. And 8th and 9th place don't scream, All American. So
I in this field, I think you could make the argument
you
that
could.
they
You're
do.
right, and that's fair. I mean, look, are they maybe could they? Yes, it wouldn't surprise me at this
Yeah,
point. But like it's been one race,
sure.
and I just need to see more. So they ran it very very well. That's not to take anything away from them, but yeah, if I'm Oklahoma State, I wanted everyone firing on all cylinders, and the two guys who I thought were maybe the most important to that didn't. So
Yeah, and Shitsama's just I think one of the key names too because he's proven that he can perform when it's needed the most. Is this just an off day? Is this indicative of his fitness? I mean, that's something we just don't really have the answer to because if it's just this is where he's at, then it would be a heavy expectation to expect him to be able to bounce back for an All American finish at the national meet. If it's just a bad day and he's been training well, then that's not as big of a concern. But yeah, he could end up being a big X factor because you just don't like you said, I don't have a ton of confidence in Muirhead and Price both putting together these type of performances at the national meet. I wouldn't be surprised to see maybe one of them, but
fair.
someone else from this that did not finish in this top five is going to have to step up in a big way for them to really challenge NAU at the national meet.
BYU, Texas. BYU was second. Creed Thompson finished third. Joey Nooks finished sixth. Then they went 13, 16, 17, 18. BYU scored 55 points. Texas was third in 70 points. Anything?
We said Texas would probably finish closer to BYU than most people expected. I think that this is probably about right. It's a shame. I was really hoping to see BYU at full strength in their first year in the Big 12. I thought this would have just been such an interesting race to see
Mhm.
them go head to head with this Oklahoma State team. It's just BYU just doesn't have the firepower this year to
Yeah.
really be able to go head to head with them. And Texas, this is a perfectly acceptable result considering what they've done so far this year. Half two night, still not quite as good as maybe we would hope he would be, but everybody else has been incredibly solid.
Yeah. No, everyone's been solid. I mean, like I don't think you can use this race to dictate how Texas has been this year. And then on
No,
the Iowa State with a weird result. Like
yeah,
you like Saeed Mikkel runs great, 7th place,
Great.
awesome race. But then it's almost like they pack together. But then you watch the race and you go, or were they running? Like like I couldn't tell. It was odd.
Yeah.
It almost looks like it was conservative, but then it wasn't. I don't know. Not sure.
Yeah, I mean they're one of those teams when if they can get their top guys firing on all cylinders at the same time, they can really finish like probably top half in the NCAA. But if they aren't, like it can get ugly pretty quickly. They're really one of the highest variance teams I think in the country, just because of the what like a guy like Ezekiel Ropp or Gable Cipierda can do at their very best. We just haven't really seen it that much this year.
Yeah, just a little bit. I'm not putting a lot of emphasis on that result for them, but I am monitoring and a little confused. Right? I think it's fair.
Sure. Absolutely. Let's go to the women's side. BYU takes home the team title in their first ever Big 12 championships. Taylor Rowe, after not running all year, takes home the individual title over teammate Bilek Jepkuri. A lot of good signs for, I think, both of these teams.
Agreed.
Molly Bourne finishing fifth. Like there's a lot to like, I think, from both of these teams. You would have liked to seen Oklahoma State's their back two scores go a little bit higher, but without Gabby Hentman, they did pretty solid, and BYU just had a fantastic pack within that top 10.
I want to give a shout out to Gavin Struve, one of our D2 and D3 editor and a former D1 contributor. Here's what he said about this race. He said, if the race plays out as expected, BYU and Oklahoma State will be within a few points of each other, roughly in the mid-30s range. The Cyclones, however, will probably be in third place, and they'll be roughly, let me find the results here, they'll be roughly 25 points back.
Pretty good.
Pretty good. Shout out to Gavin. I mean, like, it was really, really solid. I think I'm going back to look at some of his predictions here. Yeah, it wasn't like the individuals didn't like fall as necessarily as we thought, but like I thought he did a really nice job. So shout out to him.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for BYU, another good, just a good performance from Jenna Hutchins again. Like that is just like, if she can be this level of runner for them and they can have this solid 5 to 7 person pack, honestly, they're going to be really dangerous even without like that true classical low stick.
So NC State, Northern Arizona. Who is rounding out this podium right now?
I think it's Florida and BYU.
Is that it? Yeah. I feel like I'm missing someone.
It's not Colorado. Then that's who we were expecting. Oklahoma State could be in that picture as well.
Yeah, you could argue Oklahoma State. Let's take a look here.
But I think that's the group because Notre Dame doesn't have that high a ceiling, I don't think.
Georgetown
could. That's true.
Georgetown and then Stanford, who we'll address later, is now a little bit of a trickier conversation.
Yes.
It's a tough one, but I think, okay, so how about this way? So let NC State, Northern Arizona, we'll put aside, right? The third spot, who are you most likely giving it to right now? You're giving it to Georgetown, BYU, Florida, Stanford, or Oklahoma State?
I think just from a consistency standpoint, I like BYU just because I think that they're the least likely to have like a self-inflicted error that makes them drop out of that. But I mean, I think Florida has a better, and Georgetown, I think, too, have maybe a better top end capabilities. I'm still going to go with Florida in fourth just because it's the riskier move than Georgetown, but I just think they're better when they're running well. It's tight though.
Yeah, I'm sure Georgetown's like very frustrated right now.
Oh, it would be too. Like they've done nothing wrong. They've done absolutely everything right all year. They should be like in most years they're like a lock top 3.
Taylor Rowe wins this race pretty comfortably, strong time. Where does she place at the national meet?
7th.
Okay, I would have said 9th, but yeah.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I think 7 to like that back, like somewhere between 7 to 14. I think it's
a great range. I completely agree.
Not
All right.
challenging for the win, but she's going to be in that second pack.
Yeah. That's fair. Okay. Well, challenging for the win is racing Balby and Tui. So
Yeah, exactly. That's yeah. There's going to be I think there's going to be a sizable pack. Like it'll be interesting to see if Lemon Gold decides to chase with those top two, but it's
I think
probably
she
just going to.
will.
So it'll be those three, and then it'll be like maybe like a 5 to 10 woman pack for a while, I think, and then I think maybe a few women will emerge from that, like Stearns and maybe Bunnage and a few others, but.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Let's try Pac-12 here.
Yep.
Where do you want to start? Men's or women's? It's both hysterical either way. Like,
Let's start with the men's side, and hysterical is right, because my two teams that I have been like higher on at the beginning of the year, Stanford and Washington, both just like they don't look great, but they put it together. And I was completely out on Stanford. Washington, I was still holding out a little hope for, just because I knew they had reinforcements coming. But where did this Stanford performance come from? I mean, it's wild. And the thing is, it's all the same guys. Like
yep.
it was like at the beginning of the year, my like don't worry about Stanford take was like, look, DiDonato should be better, Sprout should be better. You can expect like the youngs to progress. And Evan Burke is someone I noted in our preseason ranking,
Mm-hmm.
like as a possibility of being in that top 5. And none of those things happened throughout the regular season until this weekend. And they finally all put it together on the same day. It was incredible.
I'm gonna play a little bit devil's advocate. Okay. What if the Pac-12 is just not good?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Where it's like, that's why I'm saying it's not a spectacular result, because I don't know what a spectacular result honestly would look like in the Pac-12.
Like, I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just the great. I will say that Stanford did step up. They emerged. They did. I mean, Cole Sprout's like the biggest, like, difference maker here. Washington, it's Luke Hauser's great, but Nathan Green coming in, acting as a low
Yep.
stick is massive. Evan Jenkins steps up to 10th place, and you got guys stepping in and just offering stability. It's awesome. It's tremendous. Oregon. Let's talk about them. So just to recap these results, by the way, it's Stanford men 41st, first place with 41 points,
Mm-hmm.
Washington second with 50 points, Oregon third with 60 points, Colorado fourth with 81 points. Oregon, we're finally getting to see what this lineup looks like. Elliott Cook fifth, Josh Edwards sixth, Quincy Norman seventh, Lethal 1-2-3 look great,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's a drop. And it's Abdi Nahir Haseen in 20th place, and then Aiden Smith in 22nd. I still don't know how to interpret this result for Oregon. You know what I mean?
They ran all their top freshmen except for Beerbaum, and that was kind of just the interesting thing. You have like Burns in there, I think in 29th, and another, who was it? Archie Noakes
43rd.
43rd. It just wasn't. They're not getting that punch from this really, really good freshman class that we kind of were banking on them at least getting a little bit of. And then Isaiah Story, did he even run this?
That's a great question. I thought maybe. Nope, he did not.
So, I mean, you throw him in there. If he, I think we could pencil him in.
Didn't he? Oh no, he didn't redshirt. I take that back.
Right. If we pencil him in for like a 10th-ish place finish, this is a team that beats Washington. So it's still hard to know what this Oregon team is and how, like, obviously this was a great race from Cook, Edwards, and Norman. How confident do you feel about any of those guys being in the top 40 at nationals? Like,
let's have this conversation.
Does anybody?
Nationals, just the point. Like, okay, so they beat Colorado.
Yeah.
That's one call-loss point, probably. And so, what happens if Stanford men and CBU men? We've had the same conversation last week. If those two men, which is very realistic, could absolutely happen. If those two teams get top two in the West region, well, Oregon didn't beat either of those teams. And so they're not going to Colas Point. Washington didn't beat either team, so they're not going to go to Colas Point. Colorado's in the mountain region, right?
Yeah.
And so you kind of look, Washington hasn't beaten anyone this year who would give them a Colas Point. Oregon hasn't raced this year. So, like, if they might be in trouble. Like, if they do not get a push scenario, I'm struggling to figure out how they get in. Maybe I'm missing something. I might very well be missing something, but one Colas Point is not usually enough to get you in.
Next weekend, we're really gonna have to play with the Colas.
Yeah, it is coming, by the way. I'm working on that.
We're gonna, because that I think last year, didn't we do like our whole podcast was just running through like scenarios like the week before, and that's going to be I think we should do that again, because once we start messing with that, we're gonna realize that some teams are really in trouble, or there's gonna be some funky things happening with qualification.
Like the entire West region, it's fascinating because that's the region that sends everyone.
Right.
There might be some massive teams being left out. That could get really interesting. So, all right, women's race. Oh, also, do we want to touch on Colorado real quick?
Yeah, I mean, just Vansel being a little further back than we expected, and they just don't have, again, I've said it before with other teams, they don't have that oomph, like that scoring potency. It's fine, but like in a traditionally very good Pac-12 conference, 81 points, not the worst, but in this kind of field, it doesn't really inspire a lot of confidence that they're going to be doing very well in that mountain region.
Which is weird because they were 7th at Nuttycombe.
I know.
It's just like, so what happened?
Like, I don't know the same guys, right? I mean, it's not like they were missing anybody.
Let me double check that it was 7th, because then they struggled at Virginia Invitational, right? I think they were like 12th or something like that. Yeah, they're 7th at Nuttycombe, and then what were they at the Virginia Invitational? They were 12th. So I never know what I'm going to kind of get from them this season.
It's you don't see this out of Colorado teams very often. This very unpredictability. Like they're so consistent.
All right, let's move to the women's side here, and you want to talk about hysterical again. Hand up. I had the Washington women placing 5th. I don't think that was an unrealistic.
No, I mean, you look at the teams that finished in the top 6. You could honestly have shaken them up in a lot of different directions.
So let's outline this for everyone. Women's Pac-12 results. You have first Washington with 58 points, second Stanford with 60 points, third Colorado with 87 points, Oregon 4th with 88 points, Utah 5th with 103 points, and Oregon State with 105 points in 6th place. Washington stuns Stanford for this Pac-12 title. I thought Washington had talent. I just thought some pieces were inconsistent, not as proven, inexperienced, or just, still needed more development or whatever it is. Their last showing at Nuttycombe didn't inspire a ton of confidence. And yeah, I thought, okay, well, Stanford's just better. And I think a lot of the weapons on Oregon's roster and Utah's roster and Oregon State, they're just a little more consistent and more established. So then they go ahead and they put Sophie O'Sullivan 6th, Chloe Forrester 7th. They had Julia David-Smith 10th. They get India Weir 14th, and then Tori Herman, the Kentucky graduate transfer, in 21st to round out, beating Stanford, who had Amy Bunnage 1st, Lucy Jenks 5th, and then just a consecutive streak of women going 17, 18, 19. That was Riley Stewart, Grace Connolly, and Zofia Dudek. Thoughts on the upset win?
Yeah, I think Stanford ran fine. You wish that group of 3 was 3 spots higher, they finished 13th, 14th, 15th, but I don't even think they ran poorly. It was just a Washington team where you go through almost everyone but O'Sullivan and Herman and be like, where did this come from? This is one of the best, if not the best race of your career. It is just for them to be able to put together without a top 5 finisher. You think about how many points they were losing to Stanford through 2 runners. Stanford has as many points through 2 as Washington did through 1. And it was just, and this isn't a team that we thought ton of solid depth that Washington can just stack in a bunch of people around 10th, but that's exactly what they did. And I don't know how to see them moving forward because I don't know how like they're going to be able to replicate this. Maybe they will. They surprised us this weekend, but it just seems like such a stunning result that I can't wrap my head around them doing it again.
Yeah, India Weir for me in 14th is the one where I go, well, what happened? Like, where did that come from? Like, I think she was 25th in the Ivy League and say 33rd in the Mid Atlantic region, if I get that
Mm-hmm.
right. And now she's 14th in the Pac-12, which that is the Pac-12 is easily more competitive than either of those races that I just
Yes.
mentioned. And for her to finish as strong as she did, Julia David Smith in 10th. And yes, have these women shown flashes? Like Julia David Smith for me, 30th at Virginia Invite, 50th at Notre Dame Invite. Okay, so there's at least some level of progress that she's making this season, where 10th is like within reason. But India Weir, like, yeah, she was 33rd at Virginia Invitational, but then she was 113th at Nuttycombe. So for me, I think she's the difference maker in all of this. Just Stanford, I think we've kind of gone over this already, but you don't believe that Stanford's a podium favorite anymore.
I don't think so. They just if they I thought that Riley Stewart might be able to be that if Zofia Dudek wasn't going to be able to be that like third woman to really be kind of part of like all American contention. I thought Riley Stewart could have been, and we just haven't seen anybody really meaningfully bridge the gap between Bunnage and Jenks and the 3, 4, 5 scores for Stanford this year. And I think we're going to need someone. They're going to really need someone to step up and be at least an All-American in that third spot. Because I think like Stuart, Connolly, Dudek, I think could all finish top 60, top 70. But in this year, you're going to need at least 3 All-Americans to really be competitive to be a podium team on the women's side this year.
All right, let's move to Colorado and Oregon here. 87 to 88 points respectively. Colorado, this is just the story of, all right, well, it doesn't look like they're going to have their full team this year.
Yeah.
That's
It's just a
basically,
bummer.
yeah, it is. Like Colorado, I mean, especially Colorado is the team where I go, man, really? Like, there's no Starleper, there's no Hertenstein, there's no. And look, could they come
Yeah.
back? They could. It feels unlikely at this point. Who knows? But that stings.
I mean,
They're
and
not,
the thing
they're
is,
not
like,
bad.
yeah, through 3, they're solid, and even their 4 or 5 aren't terrible. But it's like you can see, like, and like Samory Deschamps just not being like the person we expected her to be coming in, like from New Mexico. Like, there's just so many other options that we thought could like just have stacked this top 10 in this kind of field. Like they could have won this race going away if everybody is healthy and firing. And that's just the frustrating part. And I think you can say a lot of the same things about this Oregon team where it's like you're seeing some good signs, but they just don't have everybody. And some of that is transfer like related. But it's like, oh man, like in a year, this is going to be a really, really interesting team. It's just a shame that we're not going to get to see more flashes of it this year.
All right, quickly move on. Utah and Oregon State just had one runner run poorly, and therefore the depth couldn't make up for it. They
Yep.
fell back. That's basically their story. So let's move on then to another meet, the SEC Championships. Where do you want to start? Women or men?
Let's go with the men again. Victor Kiprop taking the individual title from Alabama. Arkansas taking home the team title by 19 points over Alabama. Tennessee finishing a close third there. Ole Miss had a rough day. Surprise 6th place finish there. But these top 3 teams, I think, have a lot to be happy about. Alabama through 3 looked great again, but it was just Arkansas's depth, which has kind of come out of nowhere this year, has been spectacular.
Yeah, like Jacob McLeod. I don't even know where he was, and he was 18th place.
Yeah, he didn't have a bad race. It was just
No,
they had so many
but he
other.
wasn't even a scorer. Like he was their 7th guy, right?
Yeah,
And like he's there, and Lexington Hilton, I think, was maybe even a DNF. I want to say, yeah,
yeah,
he
I
was.
don't
He was a
see him
DNF.
finishing. No.
And so, but then Eliza Scremmel and Ruben Reyna, 12th and 13th respectively. Ben Shearer steps up in 5th, and Karamiego in 6th, and Patrick Kiprop was 2nd. And like it's a great lineup. It's just a flat out great lineup. The depth is coming through. I'm not as like firmly convinced about them as Wisconsin, but remember, let's just want to throw this back there. Remember when I said like they can be as
Yeah,
high as
yeah,
like
yeah,
seventh
yeah,
place in the nation? It's almost like I
yeah.
kind of know what I'm talking about. Okay, anyways, but that's not the point, right? Like I think they're doing incredibly well. I think they're an outside podium threat, but that's only just because the podium's a little bit wide open this year. The back end.
Yeah, I'm just really curious to see them in like in a loaded field. Like we just
Fair,
haven't. We've seen them in these smaller, not. I mean, I don't want to say SEC is not competitive, but there's really three teams there,
right?
and I'm curious in a larger field where like you have to get out super hard and you're going up against the best in the country. I believe in Patrick Kiplock. I believe in Kira Miego. Like those guys have done it. I'm curious about like the Ben Shearers, the Scrimmels, the Reynas of the world. Like, can they put this type of performance together at a national meet?
And who knows? I think that's a fair question.
And they've taken
Uh,
step forward. So I mean, they should be better than they ever have been. It's just how
no,
much better.
well, I mean, it's just you can take a step forward, but then can you take a step forward and then execute on the biggest, most high pressure stage possible?
It's so different.
That
Like
might
it
take
took
another year. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, 100%. It's something that you learn very quickly once you go from these like smaller, not very competitive meets to those bigger ones. You have to be at a different level of your tactics and fitness to be able to execute as well at those bigger meets.
Alabama second, Tennessee third. I think Alabama gets second because Ilya Kipsen kind of rebounds
Yep.
from a tough start to his season. Otherwise, I don't really have a whole lot to say here.
Yeah, I think their back end was solid in Tennessee. Again, Yassine Abdallah was great, and then they just got so many options behind them. It's incredible. Like none of those guys are going to be high scores at the national meet, but it's just amazing how many top 100 guys they could have on their roster.
Yeah, that's true. Um, SEC women, Florida 49 points, Arkansas second with 59 points, Tennessee third with 80 points, Alabama fourth with 84 points, Ole Miss fifth with 107 points. Florida, they Volby's first. She outruns Doris Lemon of Alabama pretty much in the second half of the race. I want to say maybe 4K mark and
Yep,
kind of
they
pulls away from there.
Lemon
Is
Goal
that,
was winning at 4K and
yeah.
by 5K was 15 seconds
Yeah.
behind.
Which is wild. Which is so funny. But Volby first for Florida, Flomena Ascol fourth, Amelia Mazzadowney makes her debut in eighth, and then Elise Thorder, Allison Wilson a little bit further back in 17th, 19th, but
Mhm.
they still take home a 10-point win over an Arkansas team that, hand up, I didn't think their lineup structure was going to be conducive to a good race here,
Looked great.
but Peyton No, fifth, Sydney Thorvaldsen sixth. The real reason why I was shocked by this result, that was Laura Taborda 12th is huge.
Yep.
Mia Cochran 16th is about right, maybe roughly on there. And then Mary Ellen Udele in 20th. Udele and Taborda should not have been that good. Like those are huge results and wildly impressive ones at that for them.
Peyton No's been just so huge for this
Yeah, she has
team.
been.
Like coming in right in and being that low stick for them. I mean, has been massive. I think she's really what you take her out of this lineup. If she wasn't ready to go right from the get go, it's just not nearly as dynamic, and they're looking like they'd finish a lot closer to Tennessee than Florida in this race. So yeah, she's been absolutely massive. But yeah, Taborda kind of coming out of nowhere. She's a veteran, been around. She's run SECs before, and I think that experience definitely came into her benefit. But Florida, it's just good to see Mazza Downey back, and not a spectacular race, but very solid eighth place finish. And again, they're going to rely on they're going to need everybody to be running on at least their B+ game come nationals.
Mm.
But it looks like they have the capability of doing that.
Yeah, Thorner and Wilson were a little shaky. I
Yeah,
didn't love that they were that far back.
no, agreed.
Yeah, that wasn't great. Otherwise, I think there's still there's still a confidence. I think that they can be a podium team. Alabama, I guess it's not that. I just thought that this team would just be a little bit more effective in this field. I just thought their back end scores would just be a little further up each. Oh well, but Tennessee in third place and 80 points here. I don't know where this team came from. This team should not have been this good. They just shouldn't. They shouldn't have been this good this year. They were, I think, 18 points behind Oregon at pre-nationals. I think they were fifth in that race. And Ashley Jones, 10th. Rachel, is it Sutliff in
Mhm.
13th? Jesse Secor, 14th. And then they round out with Jillian Candolino in 21st and Caroline Urelli in 22nd. A lot of these women are transfers or underclassmen or brand new recruits. And like Kayla Galar wasn't even a scorer for them this time around. She can be in the future. Is Tennessee or are the Tennessee women a national qualifying squad this year?
It's just that South is so good. I don't think I think they're good enough. I just don't think they're gonna. I think they're just gonna get pinched at regionals.
Mm,
Honestly,
that's interesting. So you don't. So here's the thing: they have to beat. It's a South region, right? So they have to
yeah,
beat Florida, uh, Alabama, Ole Miss, Lipscomb
Lipscomb.
to get a push in.
So do you
Because
think
those teams
Ole
will
Miss,
have
like if
tough.
Ole Miss finishes fifth and they finish fourth, do you think Ole Miss still would be able to push them in at that scenario?
Well, maybe because I guess it depends on like, well, how many points does Alabama have, right? Because Alabama
Yeah,
finished fourth in this field. They only beat Ole Miss. It's like, well, who's Alabama beating this season that would give them
yeah.
a point?
And I think Alabama should be better in the regional kind of race compared to this, but yeah, I mean, I think Tennessee could. It's just going to be extremely, extremely tight.
Yeah, it really I think a lot of this depends on where Alabama finishes.
Yeah,
I think that's where things get tricky. So
absolutely. All right, let's go on to the Big East Championships, and we'll try to run through these next few quickly. On the men's side, big upset. Butler taking down Villanova by 6 points. Liam Murphy have to Strinsos go 1-2, but Butler goes 3-4-5 to really give them the edge. And then the Villanova's back end just wasn't quite good enough to hold them off. Really impressive race from Butler, and I think a real true statement of what they're able to do come nationals.
yeah, this was the race that I thought that they could have had earlier in the season.
Yeah.
And they finally had a good, like solid, thorough, valuable scoring across all five runners. There's a nice scoring presence up front. Zagarsky comes through like I thought he could. And just goes to show like Lepelic probably is the transfer who saves them for this
Yes.
season for like a Big East title. Villanova, I still think is a great team. I think they might even be better still, but that's only if everyone runs well on the same day. And you're seeing that like that isn't quite the case. Like if Langone finishes third in this field, like he's directly behind those, well then Villanova cuts down 4 points, and then Butler moves up 3 points, and all of a
And they
sudden,
win.
like it
Yeah.
is that the case? They did four, yeah, they'd win.
Yeah.
So it's like that. What's one switch that everyone needs to be on top.
Yeah. And I think Villanova will clearly be better than Butler come nationals because of their top two. I think it will be a little bit more of a separator. But yeah, I mean, this Butler team, I think, just proved that they're for real. It's a true top 20 team at the bare minimum. If they run like this, they're going to be more towards the front half of the field. It's just a really, really impressive race.
Women's race, Georgetown dominates 28 points. Providence second and
They did.
56 points. I thought Providence was going to have, I was hoping that they'd have Buckley by this point. They did not. Some of their women just like weren't quite as high up there, but Georgetown's just that good. Scrimgeour first, Melissa Riggins third, Chloe Gonzalez, Kelsey Swenson, Maggie Donahue 6, 8, 10. Donahue could even be an All American in the postseason. Like they're just better, flat out. And it's not that Providence was like horrible, but there just wasn't their best race.
Yeah, and I think what Georgetown's podium their potential comes down to is what does Melissa Riggins look like at nationals, because she's
Yeah.
been so far and away better than I think any of us expected.
Mhm.
Can she like continue that at the biggest meet like we talked about, in a little bit of a different scenario than what she's run in so far, although they've run at big meets, so she, I mean, she should be well prepared. If she can run like this, I think they got a great shot at being in the podium.
I agree. All right, you want to move on to Mountain West?
Mountain West. On the men's side, quickly, New Mexico. 2-point win over Air Force. That I thought that was my prediction, but
Mhm.
boy, I think we were both right in terms of just laboring over that decision. They had the top three guys, but Air Force's depth, they put five guys in the top 10, and New Mexico just enough to hang on in that 4 or 5 spots. It's incredible when your fifth scorer scores 20 points and you score 34 points. Like, it's just like that is pretty incredible running through 4 for New Mexico. But Air Force gave them everything they could handle.
And it's crazy because like you think about it, and I think the biggest savior for New Mexico here is Jonathan Carmen, finally up to the
Awesome.
point where he can be at 8th place. We have been saying, hey, he has a 13:52 PR for 5K. He's going to be an impact scorer. You just got to give it time. And sure enough, this was the time where he stepped through. But I think also if you're Air Force, like mathematically, your upside in this field was so limited. Like I don't think they could have done any better. Because if you look at the math, like they have 5 guys in the top
Yeah.
10, right? But if the top 3 is going to be fully taken, well then like how many where are they getting the improvements from? You know what I mean?
The only spot that I could have seen is like Lucas Kiprop finishing third and 4 seconds ahead. Like, I think he fell back really hard in that back half of the race. Like, he was leading the race for a little bit. If they could have gotten him, then it's a tie. But that's literally the only thing that I can see that they could have done any
But
better.
they still would have lost the tiebreaker.
Yeah, that's true. They would have lost the tiebreaker.
So they needed
Oh,
3
would they have?
points. Yeah, because Hampton would have been better than their Air Force's first guy. Evans Kiplagat would have been better than their second guy, and Kiprop would have been better than the third guy.
Oh yeah, okay, that's
Yeah.
fair. Yeah, okay,
So
yeah. That's literally the only thing that I only nit to pick there. They were great.
yeah, they both were. It was awesome. Women's race, Colorado State dominates. I thought Emma Heckel would run. She didn't even run, but it also didn't even matter. Colorado
No.
State was just better. Sarah Carter takes home the individual win. I thought Nicole Jansen had a shot. I'm not surprised Carter won. I just thought, okay, this race is more similar to Griak than it was maybe Nuttycombe. So I just was like, yeah, say Jansen, but not surprised Carter won. Colorado State looks great. Are they a top 20 team?
I'll say yes.
Hmm.
I think this feels like it's hard to tell in this kind of field, but this felt like a nice step in the right direction. I think when you have a true low stick like Carter, I think you have a little bit more margin for error when it comes to still finishing in that top 20.
All right, we'll wrap it up here. CBU men, or CBU women, excuse me, fall in a massive upset to UVU women. And then we'll quickly highlight another upset on the Ivy League side. But California Baptist, like top ranked team, they fall to Utah Valley, and Utah Valley beats them by 6 points. Utah Valley's been having a great season, very underrated. They destroyed at Paul Short, they destroyed at Arturo Barrios. Like they've been great, but to now beat California Baptist on a scale of 1 to 10, how surprised were you? And then now, where are you ranking Utah Valley?
I was like an 8 or 9. Just the
Yeah.
way that they were able to stat like they had 7 in the top 14. I mean, this was basically a dual meet between these two teams, but they went toe to toe just against CBU in every spot. It was super impressive. And in terms of where they rank, I mean, I think you have to have them in the top 13, 14 at this point.
Oh,
I mean, I know
I gotta
that's
say,
aggressive.
I'm not gonna have the D1 team do that. I can tell you that.
I think they have to be top 15.
Nah,
Why not?
because
I know it's only one race.
it's one race in
I
a
know.
dual meet, and they've
I
beaten no
know.
one else.
But like, as good as CBU has been, like, I obviously can't say like transitive property 100%, but like
No, but like who else have they beaten? They haven't
I
beaten
know, but
anyone.
they've beaten everyone that they can beat. Like
That's not true. Well, when they can be, yes, but they could have gone to Griak, to
I
Nuttycombe, to
know, but
Puna.
like for what their schedule is, they've done
Okay,
everything.
sure, but I don't think they're a top 15 team. They're just not. They just haven't. I just don't think they've proven it. Yeah, I think they're a top 25 team, undoubtedly. I think the question is, are you a top 20 team?
they're absolutely top 20 team.
Uh, maybe,
Absolutely.
maybe. I guess we'll
That's
find
it.
out. I guess.
Interesting.
I guess we'll let. I guess we will let Finn and Mara decide that.
I will text them right after and view start plugging.
CC me on that. Yeah.
Absolutely not. In the Ivy League on the men's side, Princeton takes home the title over Harvard, beating them by 3 points. Grand Blanks took home the individual win. Ben Rosa was third for Harvard. Acer Iverson back in, no, I shouldn't say back, but in fifth place. But it was just Princeton's ability to stack the top 11, 5 in the top 11, and Harvard's just back two scorers just not being as far up as they needed to be. That proved the difference.
It was just kind of a coin flip. I think everyone was like, "Oh, well, Harvard's going to win. Harvard's going to win." I was like, "Okay, sure. Like, their depth is better this year. Like, they're favored." But I even said in our preview, like, I don't. This is a coin
Yeah.
flip. Like, who wins? The firepower or the depth? And it's the depth yet again. Like, it just goes to show, like, if you pack it in tight enough, yeah, you may not have like the guys in the top 5 like Harvard does, but they had one guy in the top 5, and then they packed the top 11. So. Like, yeah, I'm not totally stunned by this. This does not surprise me in any dramatic way.
Yeah, this isn't the huge surprise that I mean. I think when we were talking about this, we said like I think for me, I thought they needed one or two more guys in that top like two guys in the top 5 to really be competitive. But when you have 7, 8, 10, 11, it really counters that the need to have that many other guys in the top 5. So yeah, their depth was awesome. Again, this is not, I think we're going to see Harvard beat Princeton
Yep.
pretty significantly at nationals, but again, Princeton just keeps doing this to Harvard at the Heps. It's amazing to watch.
Yeah, you gotta be like, if you're Harvard, you gotta be like, what else do I need to do like to win
So
an Ivy League
frustrating.
title? Because like their depth is better this year, or at least on paper it is. So, no, I hear that, and I also think that's it. I think that's all we got.
Yeah, I think that was everything. Appreciate you all hanging with us. We're, like I said, I think it'll be exciting to see over the next few weeks as we kind of come together with our rankings, figure out those Colos possibilities going into regionals. This is where I think we add a ton of value as a site to
Yep.
really give you a good idea of the team matchups to really follow closely at regionals, and know the significance of all of those in terms of qualifying. So stick with us. It's going to be a very, very exciting next few weeks.
A few site updates. We got post race interviews from Big Ten Championships. Addie Yankel, Bob Liking, Evan Bishop, the Wisconsin women, Michigan State women. Go check that out. Great interviews there on the site in our post race interviews page. New rankings coming up this week. We've got a ton of conference meet analysis, 3 different first thoughts articles on that. Colos scenarios and Colos calculations are coming, if not this week, then sometime next week, but hopefully this week by the time you're listening to it. Um, Heads up to everyone, Saturday, there's a chance we may not write anything on Saturday or have not have anything new on Saturday. So I think our first time we would do that in like 3 months, so like got some slack.
Pretty good.
But I think that's all I got. So stay tuned to the site. We got a lot coming up, and that's all I got.
All right, Garrett. Well, until next time, I'll talk to you.
I'll talk to you.